So I need to take you back to when I was 13 years old, 8th grade, late September. One of those first weekends of fall, where the air has finally decided it's done pretending to be summer and everything smells like leaves, and that particular cold that you only get in the Midwest when the season is just turning. My buddy Ryan's parents were out of town for the weekend. His older sister was technically in charge, but she was 16 and had approximately zero interest in what a bunch of 13-year-olds were doing in the basement. And so Ryan had about 5 of us over for a Friday night sleepover. Now I want you to understand the context here because it matters. We were 13-year-old boys in the mid-90s. We were not a sensitive or particularly imaginative group. We were the kind of kids who thought the funniest thing in the world was projectile anything, who communicated mostly in movie quotes and insults that were terms of endearment, who approached most of life with the casual thoughtlessness of young teenage boys who haven't yet been given a reason to think carefully about anything. I say that not to be self-deprecating, but to set the scene accurately. We were not the kind of group that was going to manufacture a shared supernatural experience out of heightened sensitivity or group hysteria. We were the opposite of that kind of group. There were 5 of us. Me, Ryan, whose house it was, Derek, a kid we called Soup, whose real name was Andrew, but nobody had called him that since 4th grade, and Marcus. 5 guys in Ryan's basement on a Friday night in late September, doing exactly what you'd expect, eating terrible food, playing video games, watching movies we were probably slightly too young for, talking about nothing with the specific intensity of teenage boys who think everything they're saying is very important. Ryan's basement was finished, which was the main reason his house was the sleepover location. It had carpet and a couch and a TV and a separate little room off the main area that had a ping-pong table in it. His parents had set up a couple of air mattresses and there were sleeping bags on the floor and the couch. Comfortable enough, the kind of basement that had seen 100 sleepovers and felt settled into that purpose. We stayed up until about 2 in the morning, which felt extremely late and transgressive when you were 13. The movies ran out, the video games got old, we'd exhausted most of our conversational material, and one by one people started drifting. Marcus fell asleep first, which was standard. Marcus could fall asleep anywhere, a talent we both envied and mocked. Soup was next, then Derek. Ryan and I talked for a while longer, the low voices of 2 people trying not to wake the others. And eventually that tapered off too, and I remember lying there in my sleeping bag looking at the ceiling in the dark and just listening to the quiet sounds of 5 people asleep in a basement. I fell asleep somewhere after 2:30. Normal sleep, nothing unusual about it. I went out the way you do when you're 13 and you've been up late and your body is done arguing about it. And I had the dream, okay? So I'm going to describe the dream to you, and I need you to just let me get through it before you start thinking about explanations, because the description itself is not what's remarkable. Here's what's remarkable. Every single word I'm about to say was in every single one of our heads when we woke up the next morning. Every detail. Every image, same dream, 5 dreamers, not one variation. In the dream I was standing in a field, not a field I recognized, not anywhere I'd been, just a field, flat, open, grass that was long and pale like it had gone dry, the kind of grass that moves in a wind, even when the air seems still. The sky was the color of the sky right before a storm when it goes that particular greenish-gray, and the light was low and directionless the way dreamlight sometimes is. Like the source of it isn't anywhere in particular. It was not a warm scene, not frightening exactly, but heavy. The kind of atmosphere that tells you something is about to happen. There was a house at the edge of the field, not a big house. A small one, old white paint gone gray. One of those houses that you see in certain rural parts of the country that look like they've been standing in the same spot so long that the land has shaped itself around them. A porch with 2 wooden steps. A door that was open, not wide open, just ajar, like someone had just gone through it or was about to. I was walking toward the house. I didn't decide to walk toward it. I was just walking, the way you do in dreams where locomotion happens without intention. The grass made no sound under my feet. The wind moved the pale grass, but I couldn't feel it on my skin. Everything had that specific quality of being very clear and very present, and also somehow completely silent. I got to the porch. I went up the 2 steps. I was about to push the door open and go inside, and then I woke up. The basement was still dim, early morning light coming in gray through the small windows near the ceiling. Ryan was awake on the couch, sitting up, and he had a look on his face that I want to try to describe accurately. He didn't look scared. He looked like someone who was trying to figure something out, turning something over. His forehead was doing that thing where it scrunches in the middle when he was working on a problem. I said, "What's up?" He said, "Did you have a weird dream?" And something happened in my chest. A small, cold thing. Not fear, exactly. Recognition. I sat up and I said, "Field? House at the edge? Porch with 2 steps?" He stared at me. By now, Marcus was stirring on the air mattress closest to the TV, and Soup was rolled over and blinking, and Derek was pushing himself up from the floor. And Ryan said, louder than he'd been talking to me, he said, "Did anyone else have a dream about a field?" I want to tell you about the next 5 minutes because I've replayed them in my head so many times over the years that I can do it almost moment by moment. The way each person woke up and registered the question, and then got that same look on their face that Ryan had, that working something out look, the way the answers came out one at a time, each one adding a detail that matched what the previous person had said. The field with the pale grass, the greenish sky, the low directionless light, the house at the edge, small, white, gone gray, old, the door ajar, all 5 of us. Derek said the porch had 2 wooden steps. I said yes. Soup said the grass moved in a wind, but he couldn't feel the wind. I said yes. Marcus, who'd been quiet while the rest of us talked, who was the most naturally skeptical of all of us, the kid most likely to call something dumb and move on. Marcus said, "I was about to go inside when I woke up," and we all said yes. 5 13-year-old boys in a basement in the Midwest in the fall, and we'd all walked up to the same door in the same dream, and all woken up before we went through it. We talked about it for a long time that morning. We went through the obvious stuff. You heard someone describe it and then thought you'd dreamed it too, or the movie we'd watched had something in it that put the image in all our heads. We'd watched a couple of horror movies, but neither of them had anything like a field in a small house. We'd talked about a lot of things that night, but not about dreams, not about anything that would have planted this specific image. There was no song, no book, no prior conversation that we could point to. We tried to poke holes in each other's versions, but every time we asked for a specific detail, it matched. Soup described the color of the sky without being prompted, and it matched. Derek described the way the grass looked, that pale, dried-out color, and it matched. Marcus described the door and the angle it was open, and it matched. We eventually did what 13-year-old boys do with things they can't explain, which is decide it was weird and cool and move on to other things. We ate cereal, we played more video games, we went home by noon, and that was that. But none of us forgot it. I know that because I've talked to all of them about it as adults, over the years at various points, and none of them have ever said, yeah. I don't really remember that. Everyone remembers it clearly. I talked to Derek about it most recently, maybe 2 years ago. We were having a beer and somehow it came up the way it occasionally does, and Derek said something I've been thinking about ever since. He said, "The thing I always come back to is that we all woke up at the same point, not just the same dream, the same moment in the dream." He's right. That's the detail that I always gloss over when I tell this story and that I shouldn't. It wasn't just that we were in the same place in the same dream. It was that we all got to the door, and we all woke up before we went through it. 5 separate people, 5 separate sleep cycles, 5 separate brains, all hitting the same wall at the same second, like something stopped us, like something said, "This far and no further, you don't get to go in." I've read a little bit about shared dreaming over the years, just out of idle curiosity, the way you read about things that happened to you once. There's not a lot of hard science on it, for obvious reasons. Dreams are private and interior and almost impossible to verify in controlled conditions. But there's a lot of reported experience, cross-culturally, across time, across every tradition that is thought carefully about the nature of dreams. There are accounts of people sharing dream spaces. Some traditions treat it as completely ordinary. A thing that happens, not particularly mystical, just the feature of consciousness that we don't fully understand yet. Others treat it as significant, as a message or a warning or an invitation. An invitation. I think about that sometimes. The door that was ajar. The fact that we all got to it and all woke up before we went in. Was that us stopping ourselves? Was that something else setting a limit? Or was it an invitation that we didn't accept, that we literally woke up and walked away from? And the question is, what were we being invited into? I've never gone back to that house in any dream since. None of the others have either, as far as I know. Whatever that place was, we only ever visited it once, all 5 of us. And then it was done. The door stayed ajar, and we all walked away from it into a gray basement morning with cereal and video games and the rest of our Saturday. Ryan lives in Colorado now. Soup is in Chicago. Marcus is back in our hometown, actually. I see him a few times a year. Derek, I mentioned. We meet up for a beer every now and then. We're all in our early 40s. We've all lived a lot of life since that basement in 1995. Kids of our own, jobs, moves, losses, the whole accumulation of adulthood. But when that topic comes up, and it does come up, every few years, one of us will mention it to another and the conversation will open back up like it was never really closed. None of us can fully let it go, not because it was frightening. It wasn't, not really. It was strange, and it was something that shouldn't have been possible, and it has never had a satisfying explanation. Mostly I come back to the image itself. That field, that pale grass moving in a wind you couldn't feel. Tifio, that small old house at the edge of things with a door standing open, just enough to be an invitation. I don't know what was inside, none of us do. We all got to the threshold and then we all came back. Maybe that was the right call. Maybe we were 13 and we made the right choice without even knowing we were making a choice. And whatever was through that door was not something we needed to walk into at 13. Maybe it was something beautiful that we missed out on because we weren't ready. Maybe it was nothing at all, and the dream was just a dream, and the shared part of it is a coincidence that feels like more than it is because we want things to be more than they are. I don't know, but I think about that door sometimes, late at night when the room is quiet, still ajar, still waiting, and I wonder what would have happened if just one of us had stayed asleep long enough to push it open and walk through. I hope it was something good on the other side. I really do.